and business leaders. And we do that through workshops like today, through the Arnold Innovation Center, which is powered by Conway Corporation, and it's a co-working space that's very low cost for entrepreneurs. We do it through one-on-one consults, through networking events, through pitch competitions. And we're so excited to have Daniel today. He came all the way from Northwest Arkansas. So thank you so much for you guys to give him a warm welcome. I'm so excited.
Thank you all for having me today. My name is Dan. I'm with Roxy Digital. You can know if anyone in the room is with Roxy Digital. We've got the same shirt on. Black shirt club over here. But there's a lot of talent. We're really excited to be talking about this really interesting prompt that Erica asked us to speak on, which is storytelling in web design. And I've kind of taken that and I've kind of had a lot of fun with this prompt and taken it maybe in interesting directions. And I hope it's what you're looking for and really impactful and educational. Just a little bit about me. I've been a web designer for about 7 years, and before that, I was a graphic artist. And so I really come from a design background, and that has informed my thinking. Only now, after about 7 years, I'm finally starting to think like a marketer, and that is just such a shift for me. And I've learned so much in that time. I entered digital marketing as a sophomore at UCA. That was when I first started making money, doing graphic design, digital marketing. I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this as a career. And I've learned just so much in that time. I wanted to thank Erica, especially for inviting me on, because 6 years ago, back when I didn't know anything, was my first time speaking with the conductor. And so this is number 2, and hopefully I've learned something in that time. But if I haven't, it's a done. Try again in 6 to 2 years. This workshop is going to be divided into 2 sessions. The good news about audience expectations, which sounds like really technical and confusing, but I think when we dig into it, it actually becomes really kind of exciting and I hope empowering for you as a business owner. Because once you understand the expectations of your audience, it creates clarity and confidence for your marketing that is really hard to come by otherwise. And then the second part of the workshop will be just sort of some general thoughts I had that are a little bit more web specific. How to structure your website, your about page, things like that. Okay, so the good news about audience expectations. If you're a startup, you're a small business, your marketing does not have to be perfect. And I think a lot of people feel like they are held to a standard that they don't really understand what it is. Like, what does my marketing need to look like? What do I need to be talking about? What does my story look like? And when you don't know what your metric is, what the benchmark is, it becomes really hard to know if you're doing a good job or a bad job. And the good news is you're probably doing an amazing job, you don't even realize it. If you're not doing a perfect job, if you're a small business, a startup, or an entrepreneur, that's actually more endearing and beneficial for you. It's not a bad thing. I think that business owners feel lost telling their story, which is so unfortunate because it's your story. You own it. This is your business. This is your product. This is your passion. And yet, when it comes to marketing it, when it comes to talking to people about it, I think people have a really hard time. And I think there's a step that we all need to take kind of before we start marketing ourselves. That is identifying the expectations of our audience, really understanding what are the assumptions that people make. That happens to me all the time, so I'm just going to buzz it. So the first step, before we even talk about how do I tell my story online, we really have to evaluate, well, what do people expect my story to be? What are the assumptions that they're making? Online, when someone goes to your website, they have very quick reactions to your website. I mean, the average web session is a couple of seconds. People look at your website and make all kinds of assumptions about who you are, what your industry is, what your pricing is. And this is really difficult for business owners because this is not at all related to the information that you're providing. This is just how your website looks, how your branding looks. And so before you as a business owner have the opportunity to communicate, this is who we are, this is what we do, we're in this pricing segment, people already kind of have an idea and you might not realize it. But when you know what your audience expects, you know the assumptions that they've made, you now have a different kind of clarity. And I think that can be really helpful as a business owner. Okay, so I've created, this is not from a business textbook. We're not going to find this in business school. This is just a chart that I have created based off of my own experiences. And I think that this is really helpful for us to visualize that not every business is expected to deliver the same quality of marketing. So over here, if you're at this like Starbucks on the other hand. I love Starbucks as an example because they are just masters of branding and storytelling. And we think like, do I have to deliver all the time perfect quality like a big national company does? And the reality is no, like most of us are going to be somewhere over here. If we're a startup, we might be right here. If we're a small business, we might be over here. And then over time, as we scale up and we grow, maybe we open another location. We start franchising. We move kind of further along this graph. But for most of us, like the quality expectations that our audience has are like actually a lot lower than we think. And that's really good news because it means that it's not hard for us to deliver great marketing or their expectation. You just kind of have to know where you are on the line. Okay, so this is not a real company. I just kind of created this to talk about. And we're going to be talking about a logo, not a website or an entire brand or story, just because it gets a little bit easier for us to conceptualize and look at. But let's imagine that he, as a young designer, someone who doesn't really know a whole lot about marketing, about what I'm talking about today. And this is based off of, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is an experience that I've had many times. When I was a young marketer and a young designer, I would approach companies like this, and I would cold call them. And I would give it, like, this is not our company, but if it was, I would call it Brothers Roofing Incorporated, and I'd be like, hey, your logo is not that great. Your branding is, like, I can do better for y'all. And if I do better for y'all, you will experience business growth, right? So 7 years ago, I would have said these things to them. I would have said, Brothers Roofing Incorporated, your logo is dated, your logo is generic, your logo is ugly. And I would have been wrong about all those things. I realize that now, and I kind of regret that because, like, this is a big company, but I had this real experience many times when I was starting off. So hypothetically, right? If I had taken on a project like Brothers Roofing and they're like, well, okay, you're a marketer, we trust you, we trust what you're saying, and we're going to go ahead and hire you to do a rebrand because you are the American. I would have given them something like this. This is a terrible logo. Like, this is awful. But this is like what I would have been. I would have emailed this to them and I would like pat myself on the back, have my PA. And they're like, this is just so good. Like, they're going to lose their minds. And these guys are going to look at this and they're going to go, well, he's the expert. Like, we trust that he knows what he's doing. And we trust that this is a good logo for my company. They would have paid a lot of money to change all the decals on their trucks. They would have changed all the decals on their clothes. This would have been their look. And this is a really bad logo for them because if we think about where they are on that chart, this is probably not right for them at all. They now look like a chain, a franchise. Like, who are these guys? That local touch has really been lost here. And I see this happen in marketing all the time, where your storytelling and your visual identity has created kind of a disconnect. So whenever someone goes on your website, they start making these assumptions. And your logo is part of that. Your branding is part of that. Just the quality of your website is part of that. But in this case, like, there's a disconnect between what someone expects from this company, which now has this whole new look. They don't feel local anymore. They feel like a franchise or a chain. And so now there's a disconnect. There's a mismatch between the size of their business and what people are perceiving about their business. And this people read as kind of sketchy. If a small business has marketing that's too good, that is like, that's confusing. Are they a chain? Are they a franchise? Like, why is their marketing so good? They're just like a small business and on the top startup. And then on the other hand, like, if a company is like really big, like a big national company has poor marketing, that's sketchy too. It's like, why is their marketing not as good as it should be? So understanding where you are as a business, kind of along this scale, is really empowering and beneficial for you. Because now you can kind of imagine what are the expectations of quality that people have about my organization. And this is, I think, this is really cool because if you're a big national company and you have like a big professional commercial ad, you might spend a lot of investment on that, but it might not move the needle for you very much. But if you're a small business, if you're a local company or a startup, like, a little bit of marketing goes a long way. And if you're kind of like where you need to be on this chart, you're going to find that your marketing is just a lot more easy and natural in it. I do want to say, like, this is not like equally true for some companies and some sectors. Like, branding and marketing has more significance. If you're a cool coffee shop and it's part of your brand, like, being a cool coffee shop is going to be something that you need to invest in. At the same time, like if you're a tech company, like having a cool aesthetic might be more important. But for most companies and most industries, it's really not. Like your marketing is sort of secondary to other factors, but that is not really communicated to you as business owners. So as you're thinking about how do I want to tell my story online, there's a couple valid questions that you could ask. What are the standards and expectations of my audience? And where do these come from? And these generally come from your competitors, from people in the industry. And you have a general sense that you have your customers and consumers. And then now that you know them, do I want to be consistent or different? And you can be different as a marketing tactic. You can stand out and choose to be different, or you can choose to be consistent with expectations. For most small businesses, the rules of good marketing don't apply all at once. They gradually become more rigid as your business scales. So the biggest mistake that you as a business owner can make is not telling your story. You really can't mess up. And if you do, the good news is people are probably going to find it authentic for hearing. So like reevaluating a logo like this, a brand like this, that maybe as a designer, I would say like, maybe this isn't the best image for that. This website isn't the most professional. I think it'd still be like, really good for that. Kind of moving on to another section. First off, before I move on, like, were there any questions about that? I know it's a kind of interesting concept. And it's something that marketers don't communicate very well. I think that marketers sort of try to tell business owners that all the rules apply equally to you all the time. And I don't think that's true. But I'm like curious, do we have any thoughts in the room about kind of this idea about how to implement it, how to research it? And if not, we can go on to section 2. Okay, cool. So I had some general thoughts and tips about web storytelling. This is like a really interesting statistic. It doesn't really depend on what business you're in, but 95% of websites, the about page is going to be your second most visited after home. So if you're looking for a place to really tell your story, it's probably the about page. And most users are going to go there anyways. You might think it's going to be services or other areas. It's about page. People do want to know who you are. On your about page, it can be really helpful to keep in mind that there are different ways that people like to consume media. Some people like to read, some people like looking at pictures, and some people like watching videos. In a perfect world, on your about page, you've offered all 3. I get this from clients all the time. What we do is so boring, no one would care about it or our story. And this just isn't true. Like, the about page is the second most visited page on your website. People are curious. People do want to know. And I do think in some ways being a little bit boring is helpful because regular life is kind of humdrum and not everyone wants to have a really exciting company that they work with. So your story, even if it's not like the most interesting, is worth telling. Even without looking at your website, I can kind of make a good guess about your analytics. If you are business to business, your website is almost certainly 80% desktop for the users. And if you're B2C, it's almost 8% mobile across the board. And this is really important for business owners to keep in mind when they're preparing the stories that they tell on their website, because people do consume that information differently across desktop and mobile. You can also think about the pictures that you're taking and uploading. If you are B2C and your traffic is mostly mobile, vertical online pictures might be more impactful for you. A lot of websites have a cool timeline on their about page where they kind of tell their story. And doing that just as dates is very dry. And this is, as a business owner, this is a really good time for you to be collecting content for that timeline. And this is going to double its miles in your marketing across the board. I recommend having a folder on your phone or your computer, or even having like a traditional folder where you start saving pictures and videos, magazine articles, clippings, awards, even old business cards, things like this. And over time, you develop kind of an archive of your company story that you can put visually in other places. I think that displaying your company values and mission statement is sort of falling out of trend in web design, but I do still see it sometimes. In general, I should say that you probably shouldn't, unless you can directly tie that information into your story. In Arkansas, I think especially, there are a lot of family-run businesses, and there's sort of an idea that you should hide them. That that is content that should be like at the forefront of your story. And people, your actual users, discover it in their only about page, and they know it's like, oh hey, there's a lot of like the same names here. I think that you should really own that as part of your story. Especially if it's a 3-generational and one company, I think that resonates with people in a really profound way. People think of it as being very wholesome and significant, and it really gets their attention. You can win a lot of goodwill for your brand by making your intergenerational story part of your business and part of your messaging. This also applies if you are in business with your spouse. I think people do like it, but you have to own it. Another great way to get people's attention very quickly, to hold their attention, is to partner. Just connect your business to locality. We've been in this area for a long time. My family grew up here, things like that. People do really like that, they still like that, and it gets people's attention. It makes them stay on your website a little longer. Okay, my last tip, I think this might be the most important. It's okay to have a generic story. It's okay to have a generic website. Marketers will tell you all day long that you have to stand out and that you have to be different. Marketers will tell you, we'll see articles online, like a good, compelling business story has these 5 pieces. Like it's a formula. And I don't think that applies equally to every business. In the same way that your audience expectations shape your organization, how you tell your story, I think that it's okay to not fit in. And if you have like a boring background, like a very like not terribly exciting, that's okay. That's still part of your story. People do still care about it. You don't feel like you have to follow a script. Oh my God, I love to do that. Okay, I would love to know really early on time. So, if you have any questions about this?
Yeah, it's a great job for questions.
Mallory, please.
Yes, so you are currently in the process of helping Conductor with our new website. And I know a lot of people here are really familiar with Conductor, our brand, what we do. Can you speak on maybe where you got started with messaging and branding of that, and what that process looks like with the place that they're familiar with?
I love that question. I really try to imagine the different people. I try to imagine, like, first off, I listed out on a sheet of paper the different people that I thought were going to be going to the Conductor website. And because y'all have a huge audience, it goes from small business owners to people who are maybe like your stakeholders and your funders. And the website had to work with both. And so I listed out everyone who I thought was going to be on this website. And I thought about what are they looking for? And what also is the expectations for like the language that they are used to seeing and reading. And in the case of Conductor, it's very different. It's an audience that expects very different things. And so just trying to have empathy for what everyone is looking for and hoping to answer all those questions right off the bat for everybody as easily as I could. Okay.
So I am in the marketing industry too and help do website building. And I'm seeing a lot more, it's been around over the last few years, but I'm seeing it more locally have repercussions and things like that. So I really would like to hear more on ADA accessibility for websites.
Actually, Adrian, you want to talk about ADA accessibility?
I'm 0% prepared, but I can a little bit. So there are a lot of different guidelines that are coming out about accessibility, and your business can be held liable. It's mostly the business. It's not like the marketers that are going to be held liable, but it depends on like where legislation moves, I guess, that like ties your business, that the product that you're making to the business that is providing the service. But there are lots of guidelines that are available, and we use or we provide Accessibility, which is a platform that can make a website accessible. And we use that as like our clients can opt into it, and that is like a third-party service that we use just to protect us, and we're kind of incorporating that just to make everyone aware. That's like, hey, this is something that you should add to your website. And I believe that all websites should be accessible for all people, so we like to make that available for our clients to use. And it's a pretty affordable option, like if you're paying for a website, that's an easy thing to kind of tack on. Do you have specific questions about accessibility?
So for those that, especially entrepreneurs who I think a lot of them here at the Conductor are doing it themselves. And for someone as a professional, I get a little scared because they don't know things about ADA compliance, meaning alternate text on every photo,
Right.
having 3-point contrast on all your colors at minimum, and things like that. So is there anything outside of that other than opting into paying more money when we're, a lot of us are really tied up and have little funding to invest in marketing opportunities? What other options are there to make sure that they're staying compliant?
It's a really important question.
People are getting sued in Conway already for it. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that I don't put them in jeopardy and also don't put myself in jeopardy, because I've read the ADA laws and it even says like, this isn't a law, but it's like a compliance.
Right,
thing.
it's like
very.
It's kind of
vague.
nebulous to know like who's gonna get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, we use the third party for that because otherwise you would have to have a designer or somebody or yourself that is like really well versed in making sure everything is up to code, and that could also be an additional cost if you're billing hourly or what have you. There are a lot of different accessibility options that'll do it automatically. So I don't have specific tips besides like changing your workflow to be like, okay, we're gonna incorporate X, Y, Z when we launch a website or whatever, whenever we're working on branding or marketing.
What's the name of the third party?
It's called Accessity. Sorry, I didn't like point this way. It's called Accessity, and there are other options. That's just the option that we that works best for our team. And the cost is not as expensive as you would think, like for a business owner. You can also get a tax credit, a 50% tax credit. So if you save your information, I think through the state of Arkansas, you can file for a tax credit to get it half off. So there are some options in place for a business owner to cut the cost of that.
But there's not a certification for someone like you. To say I'm certified in ADA
I've seen
compatibility.
some of
with
the
websites.
stickers around and I don't really know what's justified with having that little ADA compliance sticker, or if they just took it off.
Or for you to be trained.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like.
I think there could be some classes, but that's also additionally why we use the third party, is because they will generate a certification because they go through all these points and all this stuff, and they provide a certificate that says, hey, this
That's what I was
is,
wondering about.
yeah, this is accessible, and it prevents us from taking on any liability as well. So if accessibility is important to you, if you are not like confident in your own abilities, that's what I would recommend, is doing it with someone who is confident in that ability, because it is important, because you don't want to get sued. So when you think about like from the monetary cost of that, at that price point, it's much cheaper to pay for the compliance than to pay for like a lawsuit. So, but apart from like getting yourself certified, I don't have any specific like do this, because you have to do it all. It's like you can't just be like, well, I'm gonna just do a couple of things to be compliant. So, did that help at all? Probably not.
Yeah, no, it's always good to hear.
Okay, it's really frustrating because I feel like it's being so like unequally applied.
It
Like, you just don't know who's gonna get it.
Great question. Any other questions? We have one online. Just read from. Shonda says, so I'm actually taking the course on the fundamentals in entrepreneurship as a whole. And one of the main topics we discuss is the importance of knowing your audience in order to directly cater to them. Grace Rance teaches this class, so. But to also have aspects that stand out. What tips would you give to add that visual wow factor in a website, whether it be design or maybe even something else?
I think it really comes down to the industry and what, I guess, like how you want to position yourself as when a user goes onto this website, are they going to be dazzled by the features of it, which can be a double-edged sword. You can get a lot of attention doing that, and you can really stand out, but you can also confuse people and lose functionality. I would say, especially for an entrepreneur, it's less important that your visuals be spectacular, that you have like this like dazzling web experience, and more that your story that you're communicating is more compelling, and that there's like a personal touch to the entrepreneur at the center of it. What motivated them to start this organization? Like, what brought them into entrepreneurship? And what do they offer their audience and their customer? And that standing out it's tricky because it really would depend on what industry you're in and what audience you're serving. But in general, I would say, although it can be really attractive, it can be really enticing to have super attractive visuals, that I think will get you less miles than focusing on your storytelling. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah.
How did you make that jump from cold calling and pointing out issues to helping businesses realize that they have an issue and that you've got solutions to help elevate their brand or at the very least their content?
It was a moment of realization. I'll tell you the specific moment. It was, so I worked on a political campaign in Arkansas for quote unquote justice of the peace, very like one of the lowest positions that you can run for. And it was a church friend, and she asked me to do her branding. And I'm like a hot shot, agency designer. I was like, oh, I'm gonna knock this out of the park. And so my objective with the project was to give her like national quality branding. I wanted her logo to look like she could be running for president. And I felt so good about myself. She loved it. It looked really cool. But when I saw my logo that I designed in context, what you can imagine, like outside of the post office and outside of the voting places, they got all these banners. And there were all the other quote-unquote logos, and there was mine. And my candidate looked like, she did not fit in at all. She looked completely out of place. And I realized in that moment, like, in my kind of moment, like designer arrogance, I had completely like kind of heard misservice. And after that, I started thinking like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been delivering what I thought was really high quality work that was way outside of context. And I was not helping my clients at all.
Edwin.
So.
I should have said that.
I'm Ed, by the way. So I'm an accidental web designer.
Okay,
I'm
well,
supposed
me
to
too.
have it this way. I started a WordPress site years ago for a little baseball lesson business. Well, now I run a beach business, got beachsnob.com, and it was pretty easy at first. And I was like, man, I ought to add this plugin because I need to take payments. It'd be really cool to have subscriptions. So now I've got subscriptions. Well, I need to get my Google reviews on there. So now I feel like I'm just piling on so much. Like I literally just went to edit a page and it reverted back to some like the Latin.
Oh, the Lord, yep.
Yes.
We use WordPress there, Proxy, so I've had that happen.
So is there? I feel like I understand it enough
Yeah.
to where I can run with it and steer the boat, but I need a mechanic to come in and fix some things. Is that something that people offer? And the order like, the marketing companies want full, like, we're just going to take this now, but I just need a mechanic. I don't want to give you the both. I just need my engine to work.
That's what, so, if I understand the question, it's like your WordPress site has all these like intricacies now that they kind of built up over time.
Right.
And now these plugins are not talking to each other anymore.
There's something off. I literally just pulled it up right
Okay.
I'm looking at it too. I love it.
now. Yeah.
You got all this.
And I installed Divi.
That's, yeah.
Divi's great,
Yeah.
but ever since then it's been jacked up.
That sounds about right.
I can go back and fix it. I can go back to the previous version and hit, okay, restore, then it's fine.
Okay, I have two thoughts on this question. The first is, where is your hosting? If you know,
I think it's GoDaddy.
okay.
Yeah.
I would, GoDaddy is okay. There's definitely worse options. You might want to.
What's better?
Yeah, I was gonna say what's the best.
There's a ton
They can be on-
I'm dying to hear this answer.
of. No, I would say do a search for premium WordPress hosting. That's a mouthful, but like the word there is premium WordPress hosting. There's a bunch of companies that do nothing but offer hosting packages that are designed around WordPress. And in some cases, your host is just not offering enough resources, and having a higher quality like hosting partner could resolve some of those issues sometimes. For a mechanic who hops in and kind of gives your website a tune-up when you need it, I would look at freelancers. I wouldn't even like maybe even Fiverr.com. There's a lot of like people who specialize in WordPress websites who can hop in and do small projects for you there. As an alternative, like having like someone on your team who manages the website.
I've got plenty of questions. Okay, so I know you mentioned several times about in the storytelling how you like to have video. So like this, I feel like has been kind of a controversial thing from like the tech side of your website to the aesthetic side. So everything I've heard, videos are amazing, especially for engagement. However, I've seen and heard that it affects your conversion score, it affects your speed score and things like that. So I've been told by many people that you do not need or you should not have video on there because it lowers all of your speed scores.
That's interesting.
Thoughts?
I think that, okay, so I have zero evidence for this at all.
Okay. No,
I have
that's
zero evidence for this. It's just my feeling is that page speed is less relevant for SEO than it has been in the past. I feel like at this point, most people in America either have very fast internet or no internet at all. And so I think page speed is less significant. With marketing, I say, your video does not have to be professional quality at all, unless you're like in a very professional space. I would say for these clients, try it out. I would say record a quick video on your phone. If it does not have to be professional, record a video. It could even be like a vertical selfie video if you're owner of the entrepreneur saying like, this is what we do. We invite you to give our product a try. And if that does affect conversions, you can always take it down. But my feeling is that personal touch will do more good than harm, even if the analytics kind of say otherwise. I think that people ultimately, no matter what industry you're in, people want to do business with people. And it's very like legitimizing to see a person's face.
I love a good video. I do too. That scared me.
So because I've had headaches, Shopify seems like an easy route to take.
Yeah.
But I've already done all this work over here. We got a pretty good website, I think. How would you, so if I was beginning from scratch, Shopify, start my own, what recommendation we have on that? Or hire an agent, obviously hire an agency would be the number one choice, but if that wasn't,
Yeah.
if I didn't have that
That wasn't, yeah.
in the budget.
That's not on the table. It really depends. My inclination is to say Shopify. Because it sounds like e-commerce and subscriptions are a big part of the business. Making it easy for customers to do that online. A nice thing of Shopify is that it's a lot more stable. You don't get to install those plugins, you don't get the customizations, but it is a bit more stable infrastructure. The downside to Shopify is going to be SEO. If you had your WordPress website up for a long time, you've got a lot of content on there, that will be harder to replicate on Shopify. And so, like everything website, it's kind of a give and take. You can gain a better shopping experience and a more stable infrastructure on Shopify, but you might lose points for SEO.
What is SEO?
That's a great question. Search engine optimization is how Google determines like who gets to see your website. And there's so many factors that go into it, but the amount of content that you have can be a really big factor in if Google determines that your website is like valid, legitimate, and that people should see it.
So on the topic of this, I recently had someone tell me that one of the big struggles with businesses who don't understand SEO is that they want to see results quickly. It's really hard to see those in the first 6 months, especially when you get to the technical side. So what are some small things that businesses can do on site or in a basic technical level? Just bring some sort of result.
That's such a great question, and you're absolutely right. Like this is going to take a little bit of time.
Like is, I guess, updating hotkeys within the website, getting all that.
It can and it can't. Like everything, it really depends on what industry you're in. If your industry is very competitive, there's really no way. A great example is like you're a dentist. Like, well, dentists do SEO work. It's like that's a core part of your business. If you're a new realistically, you're not going to be able to see organic results quickly. And in a case like this, search engine marketing, SEM, like Google Ads is probably a better option for you if you have the budget for it. If you are strictly just trying to get into SEO and you're starting off, I would say less effort on site and more Google Business Management and getting as many reviews as you can. Because Google really loves it when you use Google properties and they will reward you for it. And if you have some customer control to leave a 5-star review, that will probably do more for your SEO than trying to insert keywords in the paragraph. Yeah. It's something, I'm not an SEO specialist, but I listen to them and I'm just like, oh, because it's a very complicated field.
Well, I know one of the problems that the specific company is facing is even if you Google the name and the location that it's established in, nothing is popping up. No website, no social media.
That sounds like they have done something that Google is saying, we don't like you, we are hiding.
Something's gotta be.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember like how the blacklist tool, but in this case, that's really extreme, and it sounds like this can happen if you hire an SEO specialist and you try to cheat. Google can detect that and they can punish you, and now they won't display your website. And this is like really interesting and extreme. There's technical reasons why this might happen, but it does sound like in this case the search engine is saying like, no, we're just not going to display it. That's not a fun situation to be in, I'm sorry.
How would we go about researching that?
Yeah, I don't know what they did, but it's all-
Yeah, I'm just curious too. We want to know.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Daniel, for
Thank you
being
for
with
having
us today.